Hi, Matt from Modern Samurai here, and today we're going to be looking at some old school bouncer skills. So we're going to be looking at striking from the fence, from our protective stance. Now, before we get into that, guys, don't forget, subscribe, drop us a like, leave us a comment, whether you enjoy what we're doing, let us know. If you want to hear some other things, let us know. So it's always great to get feedback. Now, before we get into this, let me just start at the beginning. When I say old school bouncer skills, I'm talking about a bygone age, a time gone by. I'm talking about before we had the SIA and all the rules and all the rest of these things, and they're not necessarily a bad thing, okay? It stopped a lot of the bullying going on, but, and here's the but, we still live in a world where if we're going to be working in a role like that, if we're going to be working in any kind of role where there's confrontation, where we have to meet conflict, there's always a risk to ourselves. Now, I'm not advocating anything that I'm showing here. It's purposely just for knowledge, all right? So we're just looking at a few things, but they are for knowledge only, all right? I'm certainly not saying go out and do these things, all right? So I just need to be clear on that, because I quite often get people saying, well, you shouldn't be showing that sort of thing. But then my response to that is people who work in this kind of profession shouldn't end up in hospital with life-threatening injuries, or even worse, because they're doing their job. All right, so now that we've said all of that, let's have a look. So what we're looking at, our non-threatening stance, our non-aggressive stance, what people like Geoff Thompson used to call the fence, but it's all one and the same thing. It's just different, just slightly different ways of going about it. So if you look at whichever physical intervention system that is used on your particular door supervisor's course, or the training that you went through, or any of the conflict management stuff that you did, if there was a physical element, you would always have this kind of non-aggressive platform to work from. So let's just recap on that very quickly so we know where we are. So essentially what we're talking about here is a position where the hands are up and they're in a way that they're non-threatening, but they're defending us as much as we can. So from here, look, I'm maintaining a distance between me and the aggressor, and I'm also controlling the space. So if we look here about cutting off the arms, blocking the person, we can do that. If we look about throwing up to defend, we can do that. If I need to suddenly control and move in, we can do that. So there's all these different variations. It's an art form in itself, a good stance like this. But from what we're talking about, we're going to look at three main principles. Number one, making sure we're containing that range and that space. Number two, making sure it's as natural as can be. What we don't want is this kind of angry lobster kind of vibe going on. You'll sometimes see this with people when they're a bit self-conscious, and they'll be like this. And it's very obvious of what's going on. So we want to try and make it far more natural. So think about the Italians and the way that they communicate. They're very, very expressive with their hands. So try and get that going on. Have some talking hands. So here, look, there's movement. Now, there's another reason for this movement. Reason number one is that it makes it more natural. Reason number two is that if I'm completely static and I suddenly move, much easier to read than if I'm moving myself. So if I'm, hey dude, we really don't want to do this, yeah? And then as I'm talking, as I'm trying to explain things, I literally just put a hand out. Much harder for that person to read. Okay, so one, we're trying to maintain distance, keep safe physically. Number two, we're trying to make it look as natural as possible. And number three, in the modern age that we live in, not only do we not actually want to instigate violence, and we don't want to be the person that starts it, we also want to show that we're not the person that starts it. And so if we're in this position here, and we have cameras on us, we have people with mobile phones looking at us, guarantee as soon as there's any kind of altercation, everybody will stop what they're doing and get their phones out, just in case, all right? And you don't want to be that person. You don't want to be the person where they only show the end bit, which is you hitting somebody. You want to be the person that makes it absolutely plain that you didn't want to be there in the first instance, yeah? So it achieves that as well. So if I'm here and I'm like, dude, I don't want to fight, dude, I don't want a problem with you, okay? I'm just trying to get you to do whatever it is I'm trying to get you to do, okay? I don't want to fight with you, I'm not looking for that. And so if I'm here and I'm in this kind of position and I'm saying these things, vocalizing it, and I'm backing that up with my physical presence and the way that I look, going to be very hard for somebody to say, I started it, all right? Whereas if I'm here and I'm like this, it's like, man, I tell you, I don't want to do this, okay? it looks actually the complete opposite. It looks like I do. Now that we've got an idea of what the stance will look like, we're just going to hone in on that just a fraction, okay? So, you can either be left hand forward. If you're right-handed, that would mean dominant hand back, or you can be right hand forward, left hand back. So if you're left-handed, that would mean dominant hand back. Or you can reverse it and be dominant hand forward, switch stance, vice versa, okay? Up to you, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever works for you, all right? So, we're going to just do some very basic ones. Now, I always want to be slightly bladed. I never really want to be square on if I can help it, apart from different scenarios where it may require that. So if, for example, I'm dealing with numbers and it's not just one person, but we're keeping it to one person for now. So from here, look, I'm in my stance and I feel that I have to take an action, okay? And for whatever reason, I've decided that striking is the way forward for me. Maybe there's a group of people, maybe there's weapons, maybe there's been genuine threats made, whatever the reason, it's justified, it's required, okay? So let's just clear that up. It's justified, it's required. I've done my own personal dynamic risk assessment and I'm at the stage now where I feel that this is the action that I need to take. All right, now, so from here, I'm in this position. Now, all I'm going to do is just straight punch right to the center point on the base of the chin, right here. So from this position, I'm just pushing out with that punch. Now, it doesn't look like much, but it's more than enough to rattle somebody's brain, get them moving backwards. I can then, if I need to, follow up, all right? So all I'm doing is just straight forward, pushing forward with that, okay? I can do the same with a palm strike. So I can be in this position and just push here with a palm strike. Now, one of the things to look at, I don't know whether you can fully see my feet, but as I come forward, I'm going to step slightly onto what they call this Y shape. Okay, so here. So if I'm here and I'm like, dude, mate, I don't want to do this, and I just explode into that, absolutely. So again, with the punch this time, same thing, but just with the punch this time. So from here, moving in with the punch, exactly the same movement. Now, there are variations on that with regards to target areas, so on and so forth. It might be that actually where I want to go here is solar plexus area. Alright, it may be that I want to send them back that way. So if I'm here and I'm like, well, yeah, the same thing, just drop into that punch, okay? It may be that I have to up the ante and I have to go into far more dynamic striking. So maybe from this point what I'm actually going to do is come into the throat as a target area, but this is, you know, high level last resort stuff. We don't want to be taking that as a first attempt at something, okay? So from here, we can come in here with this C-shape, here like this. Okay, we can go straight into the eyes again, you can go in with the rake. We can come in with that palm strike and then look to rake and gouge. So there are variations like that. Okay, we can look at a thing called a power slap. Now, when we look at a power slap, we think, slap like a girl. No, it's not like that at all. We're actually putting power surge. Think more like a hook punch, but with an open hand. So again, from our position here now, the difference with this is my setup is I'm just going to come slightly offline with this. So if we think about being central for these straight line punches here, what I'm actually doing now is coming slightly offline. And so my punch is now coming from here. My strike look is now here. Now this is a really strong, powerful shot. So my position here, look at it, boom, all right? Very strong, powerful shot, one that's worth practicing. We can double up. So what I mean by that is we can use both hands. So again, if I'm in a position here, I can look to bring the hands together, think like the old school Street Fighter game, yeah, boom, you racket, whatever it's called. That kind of thing, but what I'm actually going to do from here is push up from here. I'm going to come up again into the jawline like this. Okay, so there's all kinds of different ways of going about striking. We can look to be up close and fold in here. We can look to come in elbow striking, okay? There's all this kind of thing that we can do with this kind of position here. It's all stuff we should be practicing for last and worst case scenario, all right? So if we now look at a different version, and we look at a thing called a hammer fist. Now all I'm doing from here is just bringing the hand down, this position here. Now I can come into things like collarbone, center of the chest, I can come into the face area, bridge your nose, that sort of thing. It's quite an effective shot, and it's safer on your hand. So if I'm here, I'm just literally just stepping and driving forward this way. Okay, so you don't have to come down straight either. Again, depending on the angle, you can come side on like this, we can come inwards like this, all right, depending on the angle. So if I'm here and I'm quite a way out, I can turn it in and come in here. If I find myself at an angle, so if I'm dealing with a person here, and his mate decides to pop up and be aggressive next to me, I can then come in this way, all right, so we're just using this part of the fist. So there's lots of different ideas to play with, and then you can start stringing them together. And so if we're here and we're in that position, and we're working from our position here where we don't want to get involved, but then I have to, well then I can look to come in, and we can look to multiple strikes. Here we can look to move in and contain and control. There's all sorts of things that we can do once we start playing with it. So it's very much worth practicing this, and it's very much worth having these sorts of things in the bag, even if you're never going to use them, which I hope that you don't. Okay? Because if you do get into that kind of situation where you have to do something and it gets to that point, I hate to say it, but the truth is normally it's the first person to act that actually wins. If you get caught, if you get punched, if you get rocked, then that person has a window of opportunity to do you more harm. And so the idea is, if you're going to preemptively strike, you've already decided that the risk is great enough and you need to, you've justified it in your own mind, you've thought about all the other options, but if you do have to preemptively strike, then you're going to have an arsenal in your back pocket ready to go, and you'll already know what kind of strike you're going to do, all right? So when I'm having these conversations, when I was in this situation, I would always visualize exactly what I was going to do at that point, and I would always be ready. So wherever I was in that conversation, I would have a strike lined up so that I could actually throw it if the threat was real enough.